There's another guy in this race, and he is a rising sophomore, redshirt freshman, whatever delineation that you want to give him. And of course, that is the man with the famous last name, and that is CJ Carr. And, he's got all the hype in the world on him. There's no doubt about it, right? He's got a lot of hype on him. He's coming into this thing. We talked about Kenny, basically being 1B right now and what he needs to do to close that gap. So that obviously means that CJ Carr is 1A now.
In my opinion, based on what I'm hearing, I believe that to be true.
Yeah. And that's fair. And I think we've echoed that.
1A, 1B is still better than for Kenny. Still better than 1 and 2.
100%. So the conversation is a little bit different here. It's how does CJ maintain that gap or make it bigger and make it clear that he is the starter and this is where things should go.
Yeah, well, before I kind of dive into what he has to do to win the job, I want to talk about why he's so hyped.
Of course,
yes. That's my
who is CJ Carr and all of that,
right. Yeah, and that's really because I think there's a lot, and this is it's funny because CJ gets some of this. There's some weird pushback on CJ that Kenny doesn't get from parts of the fan base, and I even think the media, and it's because it goes into why some people loved Steve Angeli. There's just a segment of the fan base that just loves the blue collar, not as talented guy. There's a perception that Kenny's that way. I don't believe it to be true because Kenny's very talented, but
super talented.
With Kenny, it's that he's just not the big name guy.
Right.
No one but, Irish Breakdown and Sports Illustrated, who had Kenny in the top 100 primarily because of me, viewed him as a top 100 quarterback coming out. Now, they didn't think he was a bum. They had him in the top 250, but they didn't have him ranked as high as we did. And whereas CJ was kind of the golden boy, came from, you even said it, famous family, and his dad played at Michigan. His uncle or his grandfather won a national championship at Michigan, as the head football coach, and was a legendary figure there, and a very well-respected person in the coaching profession. And there's this segment of the fan base, and it's not very big in my opinion, but they're very vocal, that I think resents that a little bit. They resent the hype. They resent they just can't enjoy success, and they just look at a guy like CJ, and he's had everything handed to him. He's a famous name. I've had people come at me on social media well, you only say that because he's a big name. And I'm like, you actually think as you follow me on social media and you think that I actually care about that. There's no argument you can make that makes you think that's you projecting your sort of, some people just don't like success. They don't like people who come, who come out of, successful families, and they're, and there's just that. And that's something CJ is going to have to overcome.
Sure.
Because right now he's still Lloyd Carr's grandson.
Right.
Eventually his goal is to make people say Lloyd Carr is CJ Carr's grandpa. You know what I'm
100%.
saying? And
I don't care if his name's AJ Smith or whatever. Right. You pick a name, right? If you would have told me,
part of the
it is
burden on CJ's shoulders.
It totally is
where it comes from.
No, it totally is. But I would tell people to just sit and watch, right? And just don't even pay attention to who it is. Just
pretend his last name is Anderson, and his dad drives a UPS truck.
Watch him throw the football.
And his mom is a driving balloon salesman. And by the way, those aren't things I mock. That's literally what my parents did when I was in high school.
Okay, that's a very specific
my dad was a UPS
example.
Truck driver, and my mom would drive around selling, those little balloons on sticks to grocery stores. That's what my parents did.
It's just a very specific example.
But it's what I mean is they're just blue collar, good, hardworking, blue collar Midwestern family, right? Just trying to. Which I think CJ's family is. They just happen to come from a family where the grandpa was a great football coach.
Yeah.
But when you look at CJ Carr, let's get into the actual reason why he's in this battle. And it's not because his last name's Carr. It's because he's extremely talented. And you're talking about a guy that as we talked about with Kenny, very smart player, very heady player, very serious player. CJ's got a fun side to him. You saw that in some of the different, but when it comes to football, CJ's a very serious football player. He's a very focused football player. He's a guy that mentally has all the things you look for, leadership qualities. It was good to see, Trevor, my prediction was correct, by the way. when we talked about they have the weekly awards for who works the best, and that first week, CJ Carr was on it, and I said $20 says Kenny Minchie's going to be on it next week. He was, but it was encouraging to see CJ on there because I think that's one of the questions you have with a lot of young quarterbacks who are kind of grow up in this 7-on-7 era is they think working hard is just going out there and throwing all the time. But, CJ's putting in the other work, and I think it's important for him to build up his body. He needs to build up his body more than CJ does to have sort of the armor to make it through a full season. But, when you start looking at the arm talent, guys, that's what really separates. And I think there's some in the national media that didn't look at CJ as well as I think they should have, and I'm mainly referring to one network here. And I think that was because he doesn't have like the big body. He's not 6'4", 215, and he doesn't have an absolute bazooka for an arm. CJ's not going to get confused for Patrick Mahomes. But I think having that view sleeps on the fact that he still has a strong arm. He can make every throw you need him to make. He's got a lightning quick release. He's a guy that can also throw off platform. Sometimes you have some of those younger players that are really good passers, like in a 7-on-7 setting, but then like when you got to play off script, it's not there as much. You watch CJ's junior film and then especially senior film, where I didn't think his offensive line was quite as good as it was his junior year. He had to do a lot of stuff off platform and off script. He had to make throws off platform and make plays off script is what I'm trying to say. And he had the ability to do that. He can scramble. He had a 75-yard touchdown run brought back in his high school career. But it's really about the ability, guys, where what it comes down to CJ is he's an elite decision maker at his age. And I would even argue not even at his age. Just going back to last spring, Vince, you and I were at the blue gold were you at the Jersey scrimmage last year? Do you remember CJ's banging backside dig reads? Guys, that's option 3, sometimes 4.
Yeah,
for the Notre Dame quarterback.
Yeah.
And he did it again this year. He was off target on this one, but he hit Cam Williams on a backside dig. That was not his primary read. He shows a great grasp of the offense. He shows excellent timing as a passer. In last year's blue gold game, you also saw him make throws on the run, multiple throws on the run. He had the one throw to Cooper Flanagan, I believe, on the run. He's got very good accuracy on the run. And he has the ability to throw the ball down the field. I mean, guys, we've seen him play in 4 competitive games at Notre Dame. The 2 Jersey scrimmages and the 2 blue gold games. In those games, he's thrown a post route for a touchdown to Cam Williams. That was the Jersey scrimmage last year. He had the walk-off over-the-top post route that Elijah Burris catches on the back of the end zone. It was like a 40-plus yard bomb just over the top of the defense, boom, in the back line. And then he had the go route touchdown to Micah Gilbert last year. And I'm trying to remember, what was his second? He had 2 deep touchdown passes last year, didn't he? Or was it just the one? But I can remember the one to the left side to Micah Gilbert, and I thought he had 2 touchdown passes last year, but that was a go route. And then this year he throws a go route to Xavier Southall for a walk-off touchdown. And so we've seen him he can hit all parts of the field. He hit 2 corner routes over the top, or he had a slot fade and a corner route over the top in the blue gold game for big plays. And so he can hit the quick game. He makes good decisions, like even just the little thing of reading the edge defense who wanted to bat the ball down to Kedron Young. So he just waits, he pumps, holds it, lets Kedron clear so he can then get the ball over top of the defense for a big play. He's a wicked smart quarterback. He's the most accurate quarterback Notre Dame has had as a prospect since Jimmy Clausen. Now we need to see if he can do that on game days, but in practice and in high school, he's the most accurate quarterback I've seen since Jimmy Clausen. And accuracy isn't just about completion percentage. It's knowing when to put the ball on the back hip, knowing when to put the ball low and away, knowing whether to throw a back shoulder on the shoulder or high. It's knowing when to stop a receiver in the hole. You may look at a guy like, well, he threw the ball behind him. No, the receiver was going to run out of the window. He put it in the window and made the guy stop and catch the ball. CJ does all those things, guys. And the second one he threw on a Don Schuler, you're just like, that ball had no business being caught by Jack Larson. Now, number one, that shows that Jack Larson's got great hands, which we told you all about. But it also was like, that's the only place he could have thrown that ball to get caught. If he misses by 2 inches, that's a breakup. Either way, short or long, that was the exact spot where that ball could get caught. Because the Don's like, dude, I'm in great position here. I don't know exactly what you're asking me to do on this play. And that's the kind of throw that CJ can make that it's just very rare. And those are the traits that CJ Carr brings to the table, which is why he's in the position he is in. Wicked smart and great arm talent. Now, we got to find out if he can do that in real games. That's true for Kenny as well. But you want to know why a redshirt freshman is potentially leading this quarterback battle? It's because as a passer, he can do things that Notre Dame has not seen since Jimmy Clausen. I'm just going to flat out come and say it. You can say it's hype. It is hype. But it's not hyperbole. It's hype because it's like, dude, that's a lot of, you're putting a lot on that kid. I know, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to overhype him. But that's just what we see, guys. And what was nice about the blue gold game is fans started to see what we're talking about. Like, guys, we see CJ Carr in practice, and we don't even get to see that many practices. But we get to see him make throws like that all the freaking time.
Yeah.
And that's why I still don't understand why people – there was one Notre Dame site, somebody sent me a screenshot. One of the writers said when Steve left, they said, well, I always knew Kenny was number 2, but I had the wrong guy at number 1. And I'm thinking, this is after the spring. I'm thinking, you saw all the same practices I did, the jersey scrimmage and the blue gold game, and you thought he was 3rd?
I just don't get that.
Like, it just
I don't know what
mind.
People are watching. Because to your point, I haven't seen in a very, very long time the combination, and this is where CJ Carr gets my nod, right? It's the combination of decision making, quick release, and that the quick release is something that I think is overlooked by a lot of fans because the quick release makes up for the fact that he doesn't have an absolute howitzer on his shoulder, right? Because he's accurate, he's got a quick release, and he puts the ball where it's supposed to go. So when he makes the decision, it gets where it needs to go very quickly, okay? That was always the issue when you would compare him with anybody else. It's like, okay, well, the decision was made to go to that spot, but the ball didn't get there in time. Or it was, it was late, or it was, whatever the case may be. There was some arc to it. It got to where it needed to go on time, on target, every single time, basically. And that's what sets CJ Carr apart from a lot of other quarterbacks. It starts up here. Obviously, it starts with the mental, right? He understands this offense. He understands how to operate within this offense, and he understands what the offense is trying to accomplish. Okay. And that's going to be very, very important. We talked at the top of the show about whoever the quarterback is going to be, they've got to play within the offense. They've got to use the tools that are around them, the talent that is around them. CJ Carr understands this offense. He understands the talent that's around him, and he will distribute the football. The next part for me is that not only is he distributing it, but he's distributing it quickly and on target. That is why he is where he's at, in my opinion. We'll see how this goes and what he needs to do to maintain that, which is going to be the key.
Now, here's my one knock, Trev, on CJ. Sometimes I think the reason that I was, and some people lost their minds when I said this, part of the reason I was actually okay with the interception he threw is because it was a risky throw. And with the exception of some over-the-top stuff, one of my concerns about CJ is I think because he's so smart, sometimes I think he's unwilling to maybe let loose of one and put it into a tough spot. And especially kind of over the middle. Now, part of that I like because I don't want you forcing a lot of balls over the middle. But CJ has the tools to be more dynamic on a more consistent basis. And the jersey scrimmage was a perfect example. What was CJ's struggle? And I didn't call it struggle, but why was he getting outplayed by Kenny early in the scrimmage? Because he just wasn't on a couple throws willing to pull the trigger on some tight window throws that he then later made. So it's like, okay, you're going to have to just let it rip sometimes, and it's okay to make a mistake. I think CJ's one of those quarterbacks that just doesn't want to make a mistake. He doesn't want to do something that costs his team. And I think sometimes, dude, it's okay to take that chance. That's why the blue gold game was so encouraging to me, because that was some of the most aggressiveness we've ever. CJ will make some of those great throws. But what was different about this first one, and then also about the throw that got picked off, the first one was not a normal read one-on-one. He's going to give his guy a shot. It was the read broke down, the play broke down. He then had to backpedal and make a play. And he made the play on the throw to Kevin Bauman. CJ makes throws like that all the time. when he's just in the pocket, going through the read and letting her rip. And so I think being more assertive is going to be one of the things that I need to see from CJ to really improve his game. And I guess I kind of probably jumped the gun a little bit on the what does he need to do to win the job, but that's not all of it. But if we're talking about all things he does well, why is it still a competition then? Well, number one, because Kenny's also really talented. But number two, I think that you need to make sure that CJ continues to be pushed, because he needs to understand there's a fine line between forcing balls and being willing to take some chances. And I think that's the one thing I need to see from CJ if you're talking about what's left in his game, on top of he still needs to get stronger in order to hold up for a 15, 16-game season. That's the biggest thing for CJ Carr this offseason is, can you put that armor on you need to get to a 15, 16-game season?
Willingness to take the shot is something that has been lacking out of the quarterback room for quite some time in South Bend. To your point, Brian, that's why I was also extremely encouraged by the blue gold game. From what I saw from genuinely all three quarterbacks. All three quarterbacks were willing to take shots down the field, more specifically Kenny and CJ. But for CJ, when I look at him, his strengths, he is an elite processor of the game. I cannot put that more into words. I'm so impressed by what I see from him on a practice to practice, a blue gold game to blue gold game type of environment, because you do see that level of consistency. Look, if you just take Blake Hebert's physical attributes, 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds, absolute hose of an arm, and you put that onto CJ Carr with all of his mental attributes, his accuracy, so on and so forth, he's the most talked about quarterback short of Arch Manning in this offseason. But because of some of what people perceive to be his physical limitations, that's why he's not maybe gaining some of the hype, and why some recruiting services might not have viewed him as the high caliber recruit that he was. I agree with everything that you guys said about his ability to be an accurate passer. He can make every throw on the field, but I cannot harp on enough his mental capabilities in the pocket is not even good for a redshirt freshman. Like, that's good for a starting quarterback at an elite college level. And it's so impressive. And it's not like that's something he figured out how to do this past March. He started doing it the moment he walked on campus. And so he's a really impressive kid. But I'm with you. For him to edge out, to kind of move this train along here, for him to kind of fend off right now, I would say, Kenny Minchie, from taking that next step, and for CJ to also take that next step, he does need to be willing to take more chances downfield, because that's something where last season Riley would be real gun shy until the game got to the point where it's like, well, we might lose, so I might as well anyways. And then good things happen. Now that you're getting a big weapon like Malachi Fields in the boundary, be willing to take those shots downfield for sure.
Yeah. I think we need to address something too, because this is where I think a common misunderstanding of what we're saying is, and I tried to make it very clear, and it still wasn't received. But somebody in the chat said, but wouldn't you say that with the run game and perceived top 25 defense, isn't Carr's ball protection a major reason why he's likely to win the job? Why force something down the field? Won't that come later? Again, I said very clearly, there's a very big difference between taking a shot and forcing the ball into bad coverage. There's a big difference, very big difference. And we're not talking about, hey, you got a guy between four guys, try to throw it 100 miles an hour in between that guy 25 yards down the field. That's forcing the ball. This is more of, you got a one-on-one, take that chance, make that play off script. Things break down, you got to go make that play. Because when you look at to win a championship, you can't just be a game manager for 16 games. There's going to come a point in time when you're going to have to make some of those plays. Riley Leonard, for example, you've got to be able to willing to make that tough back shoulder 3rd and 9 throw to Jaden Greathouse. You've got to be able to make that throw where you're scrambling around and you find Jaden Greathouse coming from behind. You've got to be able to make some of those throws on top of some of the other things. So it's not about asking CJ to force a bunch of balls down the field. It's about, dude, you had the one-on-one. It was very tight coverage. Take that chance. Hey, the seam route to your backside, and this is a real one. This is from the Jersey scrimmage this year, is there was a seam route to, I think it was Will Pauling, that was open, but it was going to be a bit of a tight window. And that's a throw I want CJ to make. It's not about forcing the ball. It's about the window's a little tighter there. Don't be afraid to make a mistake, because if you make a mistake there, you get picked. It's be willing to take that shot. And, maybe early in the season it doesn't work out, but the next time you take it, the third time you take it. But the other thing, too, is part of this is learning what throws you can and can't make. That's why I like to see those things in a Jersey scrimmage, because now CJ knows that's not the ball to throw there. But the one that Kevin Bauman, this is why we want you to be willing to take some of those chances. Give that big 6'5" tight end a chance to go make a play. That's what we're talking about. It's not about forcing a 3rd and 7 throw in between 3 guys and the window's that big and it's, and the ball's that big. That's not what we're talking about. But you've got to be willing to take some of those chances when they're there. And that's what hurt Riley at times last year, guys. He just wasn't willing to take chances on certain plays and on certain parts of the field. And that's why the offense bogged down. But when they fell behind and he was forced to make those throws, he made them. Ian Book was similar to that way, where Ian Book's difference was Ian Book was struggled to – he was not willing to even take the one-on-ones and a lot of times unless they were behind. But part of the reason that Ian was so much better in the fourth quarter when they were behind than he was in the first 3 is because in the fourth quarter he had no choice but to just let it rip. And so you've got to be willing to come out and say, hey, look, perfect example. It's a nothing ball game. We're in the Cotton Bowl. We're playing Clemson's great defense. I got a one-on-one with Miles Boykin in the boundary corner. And I see it. Safety comes down. I got a one-on-one. There's outside pressure. I got to climb and let it go. And give my guy, it's not wide open, but it's wide open again. It's open against Clemson, open. I got to be willing to take that shot. Climb the pocket, let her rip. Make the play. Notre Dame's had too many quarterbacks that just were unwilling to take that throw when the game was tight. They would always wait till they were down to make that throw, or where they had no choice. If I make a mistake, I had to throw it. We were down 10 points. Those are the throws that I want to see CJ be more willing to make. And, that's what's going to separate him between being a really good quarterback and an elite quarterback is, are you willing to make some of those throws? Every team that wins a championship or even plays for a championship will have games where their quarterback has to make those kind of throws in clutch moments. And CJ's got to be willing to make those throws. We're talking 2-3 a game, maybe. It's not the prominent, but that's the difference between losing to Georgia and beating Georgia in the future, or losing to Ohio State and beating Ohio State, on top of the other things he brings to the table. There are some certain things that Riley Leonard was missing in the first half against Ohio State that it's like CJ Carr will make that throw in his sleep. But then CJ Carr is also not going to go out there and run the ball 9 times in the first drive. So there's some give and take. But the point is, those throws you expect to make now. But he's still going to be asked to make some of those really tough ones. Is he willing to take them? Because if he is, I think he'll hit them. He's got the ability to hit them. And that's why I think the blue gold game was so important for him, is because he made some off script, not within the flow of the offense, big plays. And I'm hoping he can build on that.
So anything else you guys want to say about CJ Carr before we kind of move on to the next part of our show? Just want to throw it up there.
I just think it's going to be about going out this summer and fall and establishing himself as a leader. That's going to be big for CJ. If he wants to beat out Kenny, it's about doing that. And then it's about, as I mentioned, showing a little bit more playmaking ability. Because as I said in the Kenny section, CJ's steady, Kenny's flashy. Well, if Kenny establishes a level of consistency along with the flash, then that means CJ also needs to be more willing to make some of those throws like he did in the blue gold game, where he makes the off platform, your off script, corner route. Maybe look like a corner route to Kevin Bauman over the top, being willing to maybe make some more of those plays that are, this is one of those times we need you to go make a play now. We're backed up. They read the defense read the play. The play's not supposed to work. Need you to do something. And then CJ made it. That's what he's got to do more of if he's going to win this job. Kenny makes those kind of plays. Then Kenny will miss on some of the basics. But if Kenny starts hitting the basics and he's still making plays, then CJ is going to need to be willing to do that with his arm in those moments. So that's going to be the key for CJ, is maintain your consistency, but also show a little bit more playmaking ability like he did in the blue gold game this year and in the blue gold game last year. That's going to be the key for CJ. But I think he's capable of it. That's why I think going into the summer, I think he's in the pole position for this job. And it's going to be more about Kenny beating him out, but he still has a lot to prove. And then it's just, don't let the battle get to you. This is true for both young men. Don't let the battle get to you. Right. And I think it was CJ that said this in the spring. He's like, we're not really competing against each other, but we are, in that, like, I'm not going out there to try to outplay somebody else, but we're pushing each other. And that's a good thing as long as you keep it there. When it starts to get into, well, shoot, this guy made that play, now I got to try something here, and you get outside of the framework of what the offense is telling you to do, that's when you can get into trouble. We've all seen it, guys, whether it's, teams we've coached or watching games. Like, that's what happened to Malik Zaire in 2016. Malik went in the game thinking, I got to go show something special to win this job, and that forced Malik into mistakes because he was put in that position. And these guys have to avoid those type of things. If they're both going to have to do that. For CJ, I think that's especially true, but that's what he's going to have to do to win this job.
That's going to wrap up our little evaluation of each player in particular. In the meantime, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends. Of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com and irishbreakdown.com, because there's good stuff all over the place. So if you want to be part of if you want to be in the know, you've got to get and be a part of the Irish Breakdown family over at boards.irishbreakdown.com.